I wasn't planning to let anyone crash on my couch that week. Honestly, I wasn't planning much of anything. It had been one of those months where everything felt like a slow leak. Money, energy, patience. I was juggling freelance gigs that barely covered rent, eating too many discount frozen dinners, and going to bed way too late scrolling through other people's lives. So when Evan texted me, out of nowhere, I figured he wanted something. I just didn't expect it to be that. Hey, random, can I crash at your place for a couple days? That was the whole message. No emoji, no preamble, just boom, straight into my Tuesday night. I stared at my phone for a second, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Evan wasn't a close friend. He wasn't even a current friend. We'd been roommates for a semester in college 3 years ago. Random assignment, two very different guys shoved into a too-small dorm. He was on the soccer team. Loud, effortlessly hot, and allergic to silence. I was quieter, always in headphones, buried in design projects, trying not to stare when he walked around shirtless, which was often. We weren't enemies. We just weren't really anything. After that semester, he moved off campus with teammates, and I didn't expect to ever see him again. But now he was texting me and asking to crash. I replied, "Everything okay?" "Yeah," he wrote. "Sort of. Can I explain when I get there?" Something about that made me hesitate, but then I remembered I had no plans and a couch that hadn't seen another human in months. "Sure," I typed. "I'm home. Doors open." He showed up 20 minutes later with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, wearing a black hoodie and joggers. Hair still messy, like he hadn't planned this either. When I opened the door, he looked up and gave a half smile. Hey, I said. "You good?" He stepped inside and dropped the bag by the door. "Yeah, just needed to get out of my place for a bit." He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. He glanced around my small living room like he was looking for something familiar. "Same couch," he said. I blinked. "You remember the couch?" He laughed, a little embarrassed. "Yeah, we used to watch that dumb cooking show on it every Tuesday. You'd always fall asleep halfway through." "I had class at 8 a.m., I said, grinning despite myself. He smiled back, and something in my chest shifted. He looked the same, mostly, but older, a little tired, a little less perfect around the edges. I grabbed him a blanket and a pillow from the hall closet. "Bathroom's down the hall. Kitchen's yours if you want anything. It's not much." "It's perfect," he said, and I couldn't tell if he meant it or was just being polite. He sat on the couch, kicked off his sneakers, and leaned back like he'd just run a marathon. I stood there awkwardly, unsure if I should ask him more or just let it go. He looked up at me. "I'm not in any kind of trouble or anything, just needed space." "Okay," I said. "You've got it." He gave me a grateful look. "Thanks, man. Seriously." I nodded, and then went to my room, heart weirdly loud in my chest. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering why my brain wouldn't shut up, why I suddenly felt 17 again, why the sound of him breathing on the other side of the wall made me feel something. I didn't have answers, just the uneasy sense that something small, something quiet was about to change. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of running water. For a second, I forgot he was here. I blinked at the ceiling, groggy, my brain trying to process the unfamiliar noise in my small apartment. Then it clicked. Evan. Showering. I sat up slowly, heart thudding a little faster than it needed to. I don't know why it hit me like that. It's not like I hadn't shared space with people before, but this felt different, closer, more vulnerable somehow. Maybe it was because he'd just shown up out of nowhere, or because I hadn't seen him in years, or because part of me had never really stopped thinking about him after that semester. He came out of the bathroom 20 minutes later, towel slung over one shoulder, hair damp and messy, wearing a clean t-shirt and the same joggers from the night before. "Hey," he said, casual. "Morning," I replied, pretending not to notice the water still beating at his collarbone. He yawned and dropped onto the couch like he belonged there. "Sorry if I woke you. Forgot how small this place was." "It's fine," I said, already halfway into a coffee pour. He watched me from the couch, his eyes a little glassy. "You still drink it black?" I glanced over. "You remember that?" "Yeah. You used to say cream was for people who couldn't handle pain." I laughed. "I was 20 and dramatic." "You were kind of intense," he said, but not unkindly. I brought him a mug without asking how he took it. He accepted it, sipped, winced. "Still intense," he muttered. We didn't talk for a bit, just sat there, drinking coffee, the morning light slipping through the blinds like it was trying to be quiet. Eventually I asked, "You gonna tell me what happened?" He stared into his mug for a long second, then shrugged. "My roommate started seeing this guy," he said, "and I guess I didn't realize how much that would mess with me." I raised an eyebrow. "Like, mess with you how?" He hesitated. "They're loud, and all over each other, and happy. And I don't know, felt like I couldn't breathe in my own place." That surprised me. He glanced over, saw the confusion on my face. "I'm bi," he said simply. In case that wasn't clear, I blinked. "Wasn't. But okay." He gave a small smile. "Didn't mean to make it weird." "It's not weird," I said, a little too quickly. He nodded, and stared back into his mug. I guess it just made me realize how lonely I've been. Like, stupidly lonely. Watching them just be in it made me want something I don't even know how to ask for. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. He looked over at me again. "Sorry. I'm dropping heavy shit before you've even finished your coffee." "It's fine," I said. "I'm not much of a morning person anyway." That made him laugh softly. He looked better when he laughed. I went to the kitchen, mostly to give myself a second to breathe. My hands were shaking slightly, and I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was the way he said "I'm bi" like it was a fact, not a confession. Maybe it was how easily he talked about being lonely. Or maybe it was how all of that was hitting a little too close to home. I'd been lonely too, but I hadn't said it out loud in years. By noon, we were both parked on the couch, watching a documentary about street cats in Istanbul, his pick. He kept making dumb comments about the cats, alpha energy, and I kept pretending to be annoyed even though it made me laugh. Somewhere between the second and third episode, he fell asleep. Just leaned back, arms crossed, head resting against the cushion. And then, slowly, his head tilted until it landed on my shoulder. I froze. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Just sat there, eyes on the screen, body completely still. But inside, everything was loud. His hair brushed my neck, his breath was slow, even. I could feel the weight of him, the heat, the familiarity of it. It wasn't the first time he'd fallen asleep next to me. College memories came rushing back like a wave, but this felt intentional. He didn't wake up for a full hour. I didn't shift once. When he did stir, it was slow. He blinked, looked around, then realized where his head was. "Oh, shit, sorry," he muttered, straightening. "It's fine," I said, even though my heart was still hammering. He looked at me for a second, like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. We went back to watching TV, like nothing happened. But something had. I just didn't know what it was yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. It wasn't the usual insomnia either, the kind that creeps in when you've had too much caffeine or spent too long on your phone. This was different. It was that restless kind of energy that comes from being too aware of someone else in your space. Evan had fallen asleep on the couch again. I checked on him once, quietly, just peeking through the hallway. He was curled up under the blanket I gave him, one arm flung over his face, chest rising and falling steadily. I stood there for longer than I meant to, watching him breathe. There was something about seeing him like that, unguarded, still, that hit me harder than it should have. I didn't think I had feelings for him. Not really. I hadn't even thought about him in years. But something had cracked open. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment his head was on my shoulder. The weight of it. How natural it had felt. The next morning he was already up, digging through the fridge like he lived there. "You have nothing but mustard and expired oat milk," he said, holding up both like proof of my bachelor crimes. "I'm between grocery trips," I muttered, rubbing sleep from my eyes. He grinned. "You were always like this. Remember that time you ate nothing but toast for a week because you didn't want to go to the store?" "It was midterms," I said defensively. He tossed the mustard back in and closed the fridge. "Let me buy us lunch." "You don't have to." "I want to," he said, already grabbing his hoodie. Come on, I'm craving noodles. We ended up at this tiny ramen place 2 blocks from my apartment. One of those no-frill spots with mismatched chairs and steam fogging up the windows. He insisted on paying, even though I tried to argue. Said he, quote, owed me for the couch, like this was some transactional thing, and not whatever the hell it had become. We sat by the window while it rained lightly outside, steam rising from our bowls. He kept doing this thing, looking at me like he was studying my face, like he was seeing something he hadn't noticed before. I pretended not to notice, but I noticed. You still draw? He asked, halfway through his bowl. Design, mostly. Digital stuff. But not, like, sketchbooks? You used to carry one everywhere. I looked up, surprised. You remember that? He shrugged. Yeah, you'd be doodling while I was yelling at FIFA on the Xbox. I smiled, then looked down at my chopsticks. I haven't done that in a while. Why not? Life got loud, I said quietly. He was quiet for a second. Then he said, same. We didn't talk much after that, just ate. But something hung between us, like a wire stretched tight, waiting for someone to pull. That night, back at the apartment, I grabbed my old sketchbook out of the bottom drawer of my desk. It still had a few blank pages in the back. I hadn't touched it in almost 2 years. I sat on the floor, back against the couch, pencil in hand. What are you doing? Evan asked, coming out of the bathroom with a towel around his neck. Trying to remember how to do this, I said, gesturing at the page. He walked over, stood behind me, watched for a second. Then he asked, can I see the rest? I hesitated. It felt personal, like showing someone my old journal, but I handed it to him anyway. He sat beside me, flipping through the pages slowly. Some were unfinished sketches, some were random notes or shapes or half-thoughts. He lingered on a page where I'd drawn a guy sitting in a hoodie, head down, legs pulled up on a bench. This one's me, isn't it? He asked, holding it up. I blinked. How do you... I remember that day, you took that pic of me outside the dorm, said the lighting was good. I flushed. I was just practicing. He looked at me then, really looked. You were always watching me. I didn't know what to say, and then, softly, I think I liked it. My stomach flipped. I used to wonder if you ever looked at me like different than the others, he said, still not looking at me. But I didn't know how to ask. I stared at him. He met my gaze now. Do you? Yes. I said before I could stop myself. There was a long pause. Then, very quietly, he said, me too. After that moment, those 2 words from him, me too. The air between us changed. He didn't lean in. I didn't move. We just sat there on the floor, his hand still holding the sketchbook, mine resting awkwardly on my knee, hearts beating way too loudly in a very quiet room. He turned another page, slowly, like nothing had happened. But his knee was pressed against mine now, and he didn't move it. I never said anything back then, he murmured, still looking at the drawings. I didn't know what I felt, and when I did figure it out, I didn't think I was allowed to say it. My throat felt tight. You're allowed now, I said. That made him glance over, just for a second. His eyes were darker in the dim light, more serious than I had ever seen them. Yeah, he said, I know. We didn't talk more that night. Not about feelings, not about the sketchbook, just regular stuff. Shows we liked. People from college we'd lost touch with. He told me one of his exes had been a girl who loved conspiracy theories. I told him my ex used to collect crystals and read auras, even though she once thought Bluetooth was a kind of fish. He laughed so hard he snorted, and I forgot for a second that my heart was still thudding from what he'd said earlier. At bedtime, I stood awkwardly in the hallway, unsure if I should say goodnight or offer the bed. but he just looked at me and said, "Want to stay up a bit?" I nodded. We both sat on the couch, this time without the excuse of a show or food. Just sitting, closer than before. The kind of close that meant something. He leaned back. I did too. After a while, he shifted and laid his head on my shoulder again. "You okay?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," he said. "This just feels better." We stayed like that for a long time, not talking, not moving. Eventually, he fell asleep again, his head heavy on me, breathing steady. I didn't dare shift this time. I just sat there, wide awake, heart full of things I hadn't said. At some point, his hand slid down between us and found mine. Sleepy, casual, like he didn't think I'd notice, like it wasn't a big deal. But it was. I didn't hold back. I laced our fingers. He didn't let go. The next morning, everything felt weird. Not bad, just uncertain. We didn't talk about the hand-holding. Or the shoulder nap. He yawned, scratched his head, asked what was for breakfast like we hadn't just shared the quietest, most intimate night I'd had in years. I made eggs. Badly. He still ate them. Then we spent the day in that strange, suspended state where things feel like they should be addressed, but no one wants to go first. At one point, he got a call. Stepped outside to take it. I watched him through the window, pacing in my hoodie, one hand in his pocket, the other holding the phone to his ear. His face was hard to read. When he came back in, he looked off. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, just life stuff." I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. He went to take a shower, and I found myself back on the floor with my sketchbook, flipping to a new page. I didn't mean to draw him, but I did, just his silhouette. The way he stood by the window that morning, shirt hanging loose, eyes still half asleep. I drew the way he scratched the back of his neck when he was thinking, the curve of his spine when he slouched into the couch. Little details I hadn't realized I'd memorized. He came out as I was finishing. "What's that?" he asked, towel over his shoulder. I closed the book quickly. "Nothing." He raised an eyebrow. "You're a terrible liar." I didn't say anything. Just sat there. He walked over, sat beside me again, a little too close. Then, gently, he reached over and opened the sketchbook. Saw himself. "Oh," he said, quietly. I didn't say a word. For a long time, he didn't either. Then, finally, "You really see me, huh?" I nodded. He closed the book, set it on the floor, and turned to face me. "I think I've wanted that for a long time," he said. And then, no hesitation this time, he leaned in. His lips brushed mine, soft, careful, a question. I didn't answer with words. I kissed him back. The kiss didn't last long. It wasn't fireworks or dramatic music or movie magic. It was quiet, soft, the kind of kiss that feels like an exhale after holding your breath too long. When we pulled apart, Evan didn't say anything right away. His eyes searched mine like he was looking for something. Maybe reassurance, maybe permission. I didn't know what to give him. I just knew I didn't regret it. "You okay?" I asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah, just that was a lot." I nodded too. "Yeah." We sat in that strange post-kiss silence where the air feels thicker than before, like even the light coming through the blinds is different now. Eventually he said, "I've only kissed a couple guys before, and never like that." Like what? Like I meant it. That hit me harder than I expected. We didn't kiss again right then. We didn't rush it. But something shifted after that. It wasn't just in our bodies, it was in our rhythm, the way we moved around each other, talked, sat, looked. He stood up first, stretched, scratched the back of his neck like he always did when he was nervous. "I should get dressed," I nodded. "Yeah, okay." He walked toward the bathroom, then paused in the doorway. "You drawing again later?" "Maybe." He gave a half smile. "Good. I like watching you work." Then he disappeared, and I sat there for a long time, trying to make sense of what the hell had just happened. That night, he made dinner, nothing fancy. Just pasta with way too much garlic and bread we burned slightly in the oven. But it was one of those nights where everything felt simple, comfortable. We ate on the floor again, plates balanced on throw pillows, laughing at a bad movie we weren't really watching. Somewhere between the second and third episode of whatever trash reality show we landed on, he looked over at me. "I don't want this to get weird," he said. "It's already weird," I replied. He laughed. "Okay, true. But I mean, I don't want to screw this up." "What is this?" I asked. He looked down at his plate, picked at the edge with his fork. "I don't know yet, but I don't want to ruin it by moving too fast." I nodded. "Same." He looked up at me then. "So slow?" "Slow," I agreed. But it didn't stay slow that night. Not entirely. It started with brushing teeth. I came out of the bathroom in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He was already lying on the couch, hoodie zipped up, blanket pulled to his waist. I started toward my room, but he called out softly, "You want to just stay out here?" I turned back. "Like sleep?" I asked. He nodded. There wasn't a trace of flirtation in his voice. No smirk, no subtext, just him, tired, honest. "Yeah," I said. "Okay." I grabbed a pillow from my bed and returned to the couch. It was small, not designed for two. We sat awkwardly for a second, figuring out where limbs went, how to fit without being too obvious. Eventually, we landed with his back against the cushions, me facing him, our knees brushing. "I can move to the floor if it's too cramped," I offered. "No," he said quickly. "This is fine." We didn't talk for a while. I could feel the heat between us, the tension that wasn't quite tension anymore. Then, just before I closed my eyes, I felt his hand slide over my side. Hesitant, careful. I didn't stop him. I moved closer. We didn't kiss again. Not yet. We just held each other, quietly, like two people trying to relearn the feeling of being touched without flinching. Eventually, his hand found the back of my shirt, fingertips resting lightly against my skin. "You're warm," he whispered. "You always say that." "Because it's true." We fell asleep like that. No promises, no labels. Just breathing the same air, sharing the same small space, and feeling something real settle into the room. I woke up before he did. It took me a second to remember where I was, why I was on the couch, why my back was warm, and why my fingers were tangled with someone else's. Evan. His arm was wrapped around me, not loosely this time, like he'd moved closer in his sleep. Or maybe I had. Our legs were tangled, faces only inches apart, breath mingling in the quiet morning light. I didn't move. He looked peaceful. His face was softer, more relaxed than I'd ever seen it. His lips were parted slightly, his brow smooth, and his hand was resting against my lower back, fingers splayed like they belonged there. I could have stayed like that forever. But eventually, his eyes fluttered open. For a moment, he didn't say anything, just blinked, looked at me, took in the fact that we were still wrapped around each other. "Morning," he whispered. "Morning," I echoed. Neither of us moved. "Sorry," he said softly, fingers twitching like he might pull away. "Don't," I said. That one word seemed to settle something. He didn't pull away. We stayed there for another 10, maybe 15 minutes, just breathing. It was quiet in the apartment, no city noise, no phones buzzing, just the hum of the fridge and the soft sound of skin on skin when either of us shifted slightly. Eventually, he said, "This doesn't feel wrong." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." He looked at me. "But it still scares me." "Me too." There was something honest about that moment, something raw. We weren't pretending it was easy. We weren't pretending we knew what we were doing. But we weren't pretending it wasn't happening either. Later, we got dressed slowly, like our clothes were suddenly heavy with everything that hadn't been said yet. He pulled on his hoodie but left the zipper open. I changed shirts twice before settling on the same one I'd worn the night before. We didn't say much as we made breakfast. He chopped fruit while I burned toast. We passed things silently, plates, butter, coffee, our fingers brushing every time. Eventually, he said, "I'm supposed to go back tomorrow." I stopped mid-bite. "Back where?" "My place. My lease isn't up yet." I nodded. "Right." He glanced at me, then back down at his plate. "But I don't want to." I waited. "I don't know what this is," he added, "but I know that I don't want it to end because of Elise." That landed in my chest hard. "You could stay," I said before I had time to think it through. "Not forever, just until you figure it out." He looked at me, searching. "You sure?" I nodded. "Yeah." He smiled then. One of those rare, real ones. "Thanks." And just like that, he was staying. That night, something changed. We were brushing our teeth side by side. Something we'd started doing without really talking about it. Like we'd become some domestic parody of a couple without defining anything. He spit, wiped his mouth, then looked at me through the mirror. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," he said. "What do you mean?" "Like this is all too good, too calm. I keep expecting something to go wrong." I leaned against the counter. "Maybe it won't." He glanced at me. "You really think that?" I shrugged. "I think sometimes we find the right thing at the wrong time, and sometimes it's just the right thing." He stared at me for a long beat. Then he stepped closer. "Can I kiss you again?" That time, I didn't hesitate. We kissed in the bathroom, soft and slow and deliberate. No rush, no pressure, just yes. And when we finally pulled apart, I saw it in his face. He wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the kiss, not of me, maybe not even of himself. It's been 2 weeks since Evan started staying here. He never officially moved in. No big announcement, no moving boxes. But his toothbrush is next to mine, his hoodie's on the back of the couch, and his phone charger's plugged in by my bed. We don't talk about labels, but we sleep in the same bed now. We fall asleep facing each other, feet brushing, his hand sometimes finding mine in the dark without a word. In the mornings, he kisses my shoulder before he gets up. Sometimes I pretend I'm still asleep just to feel it longer. Tonight we're lying on the bed, the lights low, music playing softly from his phone. He's tracing lines on my arm with his fingers. Absent-minded, but gentle. Like he's still learning me by touch. "You ever think about how this started?" He murmurs, "Yeah. Feels like I showed up just to borrow your couch and accidentally found you instead." I smile. "Some couch." He shifts closer. "I'm glad you opened the door that night." "Me too." He's quiet for a while. Then, softly, "You think this is real?" I turn to him. It feels real. Even if we don't have the words for it yet, we don't need them. He exhales and leans in. We kiss. Not with heat, but with something steadier. Something that feels like home. When we pull apart, he rests his forehead against mine. "I think I could stay," he whispers. "You already are," I say. And it's true. He's here. We're here. No dramatic declarations, no grand conclusions. Just two people who met once, lost touch, and found each other again on a Tuesday night with one text, one couch, and everything neither of us planned but maybe always needed.